I signed the papers to give up the land. It earned me $3 million. Here's why. I need to tell you about the day I lost everything. Or at least, the day I thought I did. My brother Greg has always been the golden child. Always. When our parents died 5 years ago, he pulled the same stunt he pulled last week. Convinced me that he needed the family house more than I did because he was getting married. He was the oldest. He deserved it. I was just starting out in my career. What did I need with a 3-bedroom ranch in the suburbs? I signed the papers. Like an idiot, he got divorced 8 months later. Kept the house anyway. You know what the worst part was? I told myself it was about respecting my elders, about family, about not being the kind of person who fights over money when your parents are barely cold in the ground. I told myself I was better than that. I was just a coward. So when Uncle Pete died last month, I should have seen it coming. Should have known Greg would find a way to screw me again. But grief makes you stupid. Makes you hope that maybe, just maybe, family actually means something. Uncle Pete was my favorite. Always had been. He was this weathered guy who smelled like cigarettes and Old Spice. Drove trucks for MGM Studios back in the 70s. Not glamorous work. Just hauling equipment, moving props from one soundstage to another. But he had stories. God, did he have stories. He told me once about the day they cleaned out the warehouses in 1970. Said the studio was bleeding money, and they were selling everything that wasn't nailed down. Costumes, props, set pieces, going for pennies on the dollar. He bought some stuff, not because it was valuable, just because he liked it. The reading of it will happen in this cramped office that smelled like coffee and photocopier toner. The lawyer was one of those guys who talks like he's reading assembly instructions. No emotion, just facts. The estate was simple. 40 acres of land out in Riverside County, worth about $180,000, give or take, and an old airplane hangar Pete used as storage, filled with what the lawyer called miscellaneous personal property. Greg was named executor. Of course he was. He was the oldest, the responsible one, the one with the house and the good job and the retirement plan. I should have fought it then. Should have demanded we split the executor duties or hire someone neutral. But I didn't, because that would have been confrontational. That would have made me the bad guy. The meeting started fine. Greg put on his reasonable voice, the one he uses when he wants people to think he is being fair. He explained that as executor, he had certain rights and responsibilities. He had to settle Uncle Pete's debts, pay the funeral costs, handle the probate process. All true, all legal. Then he dropped the hammer. He told me he was taking the land, not selling it and splitting the proceeds. Taking it as compensation for his time as executor, as repayment for debts Uncle Pete allegedly owed him. Debts I had never heard about. Debts that coincidentally equaled exactly the value of the land. He slid a paper across the desk. A quitclaim deed. I would get the hangar and everything in it. He would get the land. Clean split. I felt my face get hot. You know that feeling? When your blood pressure spikes and your vision gets a little blurry around the edges. That is where I was. I asked him what debts. What money did Uncle Pete owe him? Greg did not even blink. Said Pete had borrowed $15,000 for medical bills 3 years ago. Never paid it back. He had documentation. A personal check. A handwritten IOU. I asked to see it. He said it was at home. He would send me a copy. He never did. I told him this was robbery. That the land was worth 12 times whatever Pete supposedly owed him. That we should sell the property and split it 50-50 like normal human beings. Greg leaned back in his chair. Started clicking his pen. This slow, deliberate sound. Click, 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 like a countdown timer. He told me I was being emotional, that I did not understand how estates work, that as executor, he had broad discretion to settle debts and distribute assets. He was doing me a favor by letting me have the hangar. There was scrap metal in there, old tools. I could probably clear 10 or 15,000 if I worked at it. Take it or leave it. I lost it. I actually lost it. I stood up so fast my chair hit the wall behind me. Told him I would take him to probate court. Sue him for breach of fiduciary duty. Get a real lawyer to look at those fake debts he made up. I was screaming. The lawyer was staring at his desk like he wanted to disappear into it. Greg just smiled. That same smile he had when he took the house. That same smile that said he already knew he had won. Then I felt Elena's hand on my shoulder. My wife, the only person in my life with a working brain. She asked if we could step outside for a minute. Her voice was calm. Too calm. That scary kind of calm where you know someone is about to say something you do not want to hear. We went into the hallway. One of those sad office hallways with flickering fluorescent lights and beige walls that have not been painted since 1987. I was pacing, ranting, telling her we had to fight this. We had to get a lawyer. We could not let Greg steal from us again. Elena just looked at me. Then she started talking numbers. A probate lawyer would want $5,000 up front. Minimum. The case would take a year. Maybe more. Court costs, filing fees, depositions, discovery. We would be looking at $20,000 or $30,000 in legal bills by the time it was over. And Greg had resources. He had equity in the house. The house that should have been half mine. He could afford to drag this out. He could afford to wait. We could not. She reminded me that we had $217 in our checking account, that our mortgage payment was due in 10 days, that we were already behind on the car insurance, that my hours at work had been cut, and we were barely making ends meet as it was. She told me that even if we won, even if the court ruled in our favor and forced Greg to split the land, we would be bankrupt by the time we got there. We would lose the house, trash our credit, spend years digging out of debt. And for what? To prove a point? I wanted to argue, wanted to tell her that it was not about the money. It was about what was right, about standing up to a bully, about not letting Greg walk all over us for the third time. But she was right. She was absolutely right. The American justice system is not designed for people like us. It is designed for people who can afford to play the game. People who can write a check for $50,000 in legal fees without blinking. People like Greg. Elena put both hands on my shoulders, looked me right in the eye, told me to sign the quitclaim deed, let Greg have his land, walk away with the hangar and whatever was in it, cut our losses. She said we needed peace, not war. I felt something break inside me, not anger anymore. Just this hollow, sick feeling, like losing the house all over again, like every time I had backed down and told myself it was a mature thing to do. But she was right. We walked back into that office. Greg was still sitting there, still clicking his pen. The lawyer looked relieved. He probably thought we were going to flip the table or something. I sat down, picked up the pen. Greg started talking about how this was the smart choice. How I would thank him later. How the hangar had some decent stuff in it, and I would probably make out fine. I did not look at him. Just sign my name on the line. Push the paper across the desk. Then I said something I should have said 5 years ago. I told Greg that I was signing this, that he was getting what he wanted, but this was the end. No more family dinners. No more phone calls. No more pretending we were brothers. As far as I was concerned, he died the same day as Uncle Pete. Do not call me. Do not text me. Do not show up at my house. We were done. You know what he did? He laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not an uncomfortable laugh. A real, genuine laugh. Like I had just told the funniest joke he had ever heard. He picked up the keys to Uncle Pete's land, tossed them in the air, and caught them. Told me I always had a flair for drama. That I was just like Mom. Too emotional. Too soft. He told me good luck with the junkyard. Then he walked out. The lawyer handed me a different set of keys. Smaller. Older. The keys to the hangar. He told me the property was located at an address in Fontana. Off the highway. Nothing much around it. I could access it any time. It was mine now. He said it with this apologetic tone, like he was handing me a participation trophy. Elena and I walked to the parking lot in silence. It was one of those California afternoons where the sun is too bright and everything feels fake. like you are walking through a movie set, like none of this is real. I got in the car, sat there with my hands on the wheel, did not start the engine. Elena asked if I was okay. I told her I did not know. Here's the thing about losing. Really losing. It is not the anger that gets you. Anger is easy. Anger is fuel. Anger makes you feel like you are doing something. It is the shame, the humiliation, the sick, burning feeling in your stomach that tells you that you are weak, that you let someone take advantage of you. Again, that you will always be the little brother who gets the scraps while the golden child gets the feast. That feeling does not go away. I started the car, drove home, did not talk, did not turn on the radio, just drove. When we got back to our apartment, I went straight to the bedroom, lay down on the bed, stared at the ceiling. Elena came in an hour later, asked if I wanted dinner. I told her I was not hungry. She sat on the edge of the bed, told me we would figure it out, that the hangar might have something useful, that at least we did not have to deal with Greg anymore. I did not answer. That night, I could not sleep. Kept thinking about Uncle Pete, about the stories he told, about the way he talked about the old studio days like they were magic, how he said they threw away a fortune because they did not know what they had. I wondered what was in that hangar. Scrap metal, probably, rusted tools, boxes of junk that no one wanted. Greg was right about one thing. It was a junkyard, and I was the idiot who got stuck with it. The next morning, I woke up with that same sick feeling, the kind that does not go away when you open your eyes, the kind that sits in your chest like a stone. Elena was already up, making coffee. She asked if I was going to go check out the hangar. I told her I would. Eventually, when I had the energy to face another humiliation, she said I should go today. Get it over with. See what was there. Start making a plan. So I did. I drove out to Fontana, took the 10 East, and got off at some exit I had never heard of. Followed the GPS down a series of back roads that got progressively more depressing. Empty lots, boarded up buildings, chain link fences with weeds growing through them. Uncle Pete's hangar sat at the end of a dirt road. It was bigger than I expected. One of those old military-style Quonset huts. Corrugated metal, rust stains running down the sides. A padlock the size of my fist, holding the door shut. I sat in my car for a minute, stared at it, thought about just leaving, selling the whole property as is to some developer and taking whatever I could get. But I did not. I got out, walked to the door, the key stuck in the lock. I had to wiggle it back and forth for 30 seconds before it finally turned. The smell hit me first. Dust, mildew, that specific old building smell that gets into your lungs and stays there. I pulled the door open. It made this horrible grinding sound, metal on metal, like something out of a horror movie. Inside was dark. No windows. Just one long tunnel of shadow stretching back into nothing. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, stepped inside, and that is when my life changed forever. But I did not know it yet. The inside of that hangar was like stepping into a tomb. Not the clean, marble kind you see in movies. The real kind. The kind that smells like decay and forgotten things. My phone flashlight cut through the darkness in this weak little cone of light that made everything worse. Because I could see just enough to know this place was a disaster, but not enough to see what was waiting for me in the shadows. I took 3 steps inside, and my foot hit something. A metal pipe. It rolled away with this hollow clang that echoed through the whole space. I froze, listened, like something was going to answer back. Nothing did. I found a light switch near the door. Old rotary style. The kind that probably had not been touched in 20 years. I flipped it. Half the fluorescent tubes overhead flickered to life. The other half stayed dark. But it was enough. And what I saw made me want to leave. Junk. Mountains of it. Stacked in no particular order. Wooden crates leaning against each other like drunk people. Cardboard boxes sagging from water damage. Tarps covering God knows what. Everything coated in this thick layer of dust that made the air taste like old paper. Uncle Pete had not been a hoarder exactly. He had just never thrown anything away. Every piece of equipment he hauled for MGM. every tool he ever bought, every random thing he thought might be useful someday. It was all here, crammed into this metal cave like a museum of things nobody wanted. I stood there for a solid minute, just staring, trying to figure out where to even start. Then I thought about Greg, probably sitting on a beach somewhere, or at some expensive restaurant, spending money he stole from me, from us, from Uncle Pete's memory. That got me moving. I spent the first hour just making paths, dragging boxes, shoving crates aside, creating some kind of system, so I could actually see what I was dealing with. The dust got everywhere, in my hair, in my nose. Every breath tasted like decay. I found a folding table buried under some painter's drop cloths. Set it up near the entrance where the light was better. Started sorting. Trash on the left. Possible scrap on the right. Anything valuable in the middle. The middle pile stayed empty. Most of it was garbage. Literally. Broken furniture. Shattered picture frames. Boxes of VHS tapes, so warped from heat, they looked like plastic sculptures. I dragged bag after bag to the dumpster outside. My back started hurting after the first hour. My hands got filthy. Black grime under every fingernail. This was my inheritance. This was what I got instead of $180,000. A landfill with a roof. Around noon, I took a break. Sat on an overturned bucket. Drank water from a bottle I brought. Checked my phone. Elena had texted asking how it was going. I did not answer. What was I supposed to say? That my brother was right? That this place was exactly the junkyard he said it was? I put my phone away. Got back to work. The scrap pile started growing. Copper wire. Lots of it. Old electrical cables Pete must have salvaged from demolished buildings. There was a decent amount. Maybe 100 pounds. Copper was going for $3 a pound. So that was 300 right there. I found some brass fittings, old plumbing fixtures, a box of aluminum window frames. None of it was worth much individually, but together, maybe $1,000. Maybe $1,500 if I got lucky. I kept digging. By mid-afternoon, I had worked my way to the middle of the hangar. The piles got more organized back here. Like Pete actually had a system. Tools hung on pegboards. Labeled boxes stacked on metal shelving units. I found a whole section of vintage hand tools. Wrenches, socket sets, levels and squares. The good stuff. Made in America back when that meant something. A guy I knew bought and sold tools at flea markets. He might give me $500 for the lot. Maybe more. So now I was up to $2,000. Maybe $2,500 if everything went perfectly. Greg got $180,000 in land. I got enough money to cover 2 months of mortgage payments. The math made me sick. But I kept going. Because what else was I going to do? Sit in my apartment and feel sorry for myself? At least here I was doing something. Moving. Working. Pretending like this mattered. I worked until my hands were shaking from exhaustion. Until my lower back felt like someone had kicked it, until the dust in my throat made me cough every few minutes. Then I saw the Footlocker. It was shoved into the back corner, behind a stack of wooden pallets, behind a rolled-up section of chain-link fence, behind everything, like someone had deliberately hidden it, or maybe just forgotten it existed. Military surplus, olive drab green, the kind soldiers used to use before everything went digital. Heavy gauge steel with reinforced corners. A padlock the size of my fist, holding it shut. But here's the thing. The padlock was open, just hanging there, like someone had unlocked it years ago and never bothered to close it. I pulled the pallets away, dragged the fence section aside, got down on my knees. The floor back here was concrete, cold and gritty. I could feel it through my jeans. The Footlocker was heavy, did not slide. I had to rock it back and forth to move it even a few inches. Whatever was inside had serious weight. I got it turned around, faced toward the light, brushed the dust off the top. There was stenciled lettering, faded but readable. PFC P. Harrison, U.S. Army, 1969. Uncle Pete, before MGM, before the trucks, back when he was young and the world was a different place. I lifted the lid. The smell hit me like a physical force. I actually jerked backward, nearly fell on my ass. It was not just bad. It was offensive, chemically wrong, like someone had mixed mildew and formaldehyde in old meat and left it to ferment in a closed container for 50 years. I covered my nose with my shirt, tried to breathe through my mouth, looked inside. At first, I thought it was a dead animal, a bearskin maybe, or a really badly preserved deer hide. It was brown, matted, covering what looked like mold or dust or both. The fur was falling out in patches. The whole thing was folded and compressed like someone had just stuffed it in there, without any care. There was a plastic garment bag underneath it, one of those heavy-duty ones. But the zipper was broken, and the plastic had torn in several places. The thing inside had just been sitting there, exposed, rotting. I stared at it for a long time, trying to figure out what the hell Uncle Pete was thinking. Why would anyone keep this? Why would anyone store a decomposing animal hide in a Footlocker for decades? Then I got angry, really angry. Greg took the land, the real value, the thing that mattered, and he left me with this. A hangar full of trash and a Footlocker with a dead animal in it. This was his idea of fair. This was his idea of family. I grabbed the thing by one corner, tried to pull it out. The weight surprised me. It did not want to move. I had to use both hands, brace my feet, pull hard. It came free all at once. I stumbled backward, nearly dropped it. 40 kilograms, maybe more. It felt like a body. That specific dead weight that does not shift or balance, just pulls straight down like gravity got cranked up to 11. I stood there holding this rotting piece of garbage and thought about Greg, about how he was probably laughing right now, about how he probably knew this was here, probably thought it was hilarious. I was going to burn it, just drag it outside, douse it in gasoline, light a match and watch it turn to ash. Symbolic, cleansing, the final middle finger to everything this place represented. I dragged it toward the entrance. The thing left a trail in the dust, a dark line like a snail's track. The smell got worse as I moved. Like disturbing it released new layers of rot. My arms were shaking by the time I got it to the door. I dropped it on the concrete. It hit with this heavy thud. Dense, solid, not hollow like I expected. I stood there, hands on my knees, breathing hard, trying not to gag from the smell. That is when I noticed the zipper, or what was left of it. The pull tab was broken off, but the track was still there, running along what I thought was just a seam in the hide. But it was not a seam. It was an opening. I knelt down, used my phone flashlight, even though we were near the entrance, and the light was fine. I wanted to see this up close. Wanted to understand what I was looking at. There was a label inside. Fabric, sewn into the lining. Faded but legible. MGM Wardrobe Department. Property of MGM. Do not remove. My brain stopped. Just completely stopped. Like someone hit a pause button. I stared at those words. Read them 3 times. 4 times. Try and make them make sense. This was not a dead animal. This was a costume. A prop. Something from the studio. But what? I looked around, scanning the area where I found the Footlocker. That is when I saw the box. Cardboard, smaller than a shoebox, sitting on the shelf right above where the Footlocker had been, like they went together, like someone had stored them as a set. I walked over, pulled it down, opened it. Film reels, 16 millimeters, 3 of them, each in a metal canister with a label strip across the top. The writing was typewriter font, official looking. The Wizard of Oz, Screen Tests, 1939. I stood there holding that box, looking at the thing on the floor, looking back at the box. My hand started shaking, not from exhaustion this time. I thought about Uncle Pete, about his stories, about the day MGM sold everything, about how he said they had no idea what they were throwing away. I thought about the label, property of MGM. Do not remove. I thought about 1939, about what movies were being made, about what costumes might have been used. The Wizard of Oz. The most famous movie ever made. The one every kid in America has seen 50 times. The one that plays on TV every year. The one with the songs everyone knows. The one with the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Cowardly Lion. The lion. I looked at the thing on the floor. Really looked at it. Not as garbage. Not as a rotting hide. But as something that might have been something else once. Before time and neglect destroyed it. The size was right. Bigger than a person, but not huge. The shape was vaguely feline. There were seams. Construction. This had been built, assembled, designed by someone who knew what they were doing. I knelt down again. Touched it. The fur was coarse. Stiff. Not like any animal fur I had ever felt. More like it had been treated, preserved, processed for a specific purpose. My heart was pounding. That stupid, hopeful feeling you get when you think maybe, just maybe, you caught a break. When you think the universe might not be completely stacked against you. I was probably wrong. This was probably just some random prop from some forgotten MGM production. Worth nothing. Worth less than nothing. Because I would have to pay someone to haul it away. But maybe. I picked up the box with the film reels. Carried it to my car. Came back for the costume. Dragged it across the parking lot. Every step felt like dragging a corpse. My arms were burning. My back screaming. But I did not care. I opened the trunk. Threw everything in. The costume barely fit. I had to fold down the back seat. The smell filled the car immediately. Like death and chemicals and old fabric. I did not care. I drove home with the windows down. Wind whipping through the car. The smell was still there, but at least it was bearable. I kept glancing in the rear-view mirror. At the shape in the back seat. At the box of film reels on the passenger seat. This was insane. I knew it was insane. The thing was probably worth nothing. The film reels might not even be from The Wizard of Oz. Might just be random screen tests. Might be completely valueless. But I had to know. Had to check. Had to see if maybe, just this once, things were not as terrible as they seemed. When I got home, Elena was in the kitchen. She took one look at me and asked what happened. Why did I look like I had been digging graves? I told her she needed to see something. Told her to come outside. Help me carry something in. She followed me to the car. I opened the trunk. She saw the costume. Wrinkled her nose. Asked what in God's name that smell was. I told her it might be nothing. Probably was nothing. But maybe, if we were lucky, if the universe decided to stop kicking us for 5 seconds, it might be something important. She looked at me like I had lost my mind. Maybe I had. We carried it inside, put it in the garage, laid it out on a tarp. I brought out the box of film reels, set them on the workbench. Elena asked what I was thinking, what any of this meant. I told her I did not know yet. But tomorrow we were going to find out. Tomorrow we were going to watch some old movies and see if I was crazy, or if maybe, just maybe, Greg had made the biggest mistake of his life. That night, Elena and I sat in the garage, staring at the thing on the tarp, like it was going to get up and walk away. The smell had not improved. If anything, it got worse as the thing warmed up to room temperature. I had opened the garage door, set up a fan. Did not matter. The stench clung to everything. To my clothes, to the walls, to the inside of my nose. Elena asked what the plan was, how we were supposed to figure out what this actually was. I told her we start with Google, like every other problem in modern life. I pulled out my phone, typed in Wizard of Oz costume Cowardly Lion, hit search. The results loaded. I clicked on images, and there he was, Bert Lahr in full costume. That goofy mane, that sad, expressive face, that massive furry body that made him look like he weighed 400 pounds. I looked at the screen, looked at the heap on the tarp, back at the screen. Elena leaned over my shoulder, asked if I was seeing what she was seeing. I told her I did not know what I was seeing, but the shape was right, the size was right, the color was right. Even the pattern of the mane seemed to match. I kept scrolling. Found an article from some film preservation website, the kind written by people who care way too much about old movies. But right now I love those people. because they had details. The costume was made from real lion skins, not fake fur, not synthetic materials. Actual lion hides that MGM acquired from some taxidermy supplier. They hired craftsmen to sew them together into a wearable suit, added padding, built in a ventilation system because the thing was going to be a death trap under studio lights. It weighed 90 pounds. Burt Lahr called it the most uncomfortable costume in film history, said he sweated through it during every take, said the smell was unbearable even when it was new. I read that last part out loud to Elena about the smell. We both looked at the thing on the tarp. She asked if I thought it was real, if this could actually be it. I told her I had no idea. But if it was fake, someone went to a hell of a lot of trouble. Real lion fur, the right construction, the MGM label, the fact that Uncle Pete worked at the studio during the exact time period when they were dumping props and costumes. The coincidences were piling up. I called in sick the next day, told my boss I had food poisoning. He did not care. I barely had hours anyway. Elena took the day off too. We were going to L.A., to a place I found online, some specialty auction house that dealt with Hollywood memorabilia. The website said they offered free authentication services for potential consignments. I figured if anyone could tell us what this was, it would be them. We wrapped the costume in plastic sheeting, duct taped it like we were disposing of a body, loaded it into the trunk. The smell still leaked out. We drove the whole way with the windows down and the air conditioning on full blast. The auction house was in West Hollywood, one of those buildings that looks like a warehouse on the outside but has marble floors and track lighting on the inside. Fancy without being obnoxious. The kind of place that whispers money instead of shouting it. A receptionist with perfect teeth asked if we had an appointment. I told her we did. I had called ahead, told them I might have something interesting. She made us wait 20 minutes. Gave us water in little glass bottles that probably cost more than my lunch. I sat there sweating in my jeans and work shirt, feeling like I did not belong. Elena held my hand, told me to breathe. The expert was younger than I expected, maybe 40, dressed like a college professor, blazer over a t-shirt, expensive sneakers. He introduced himself, and I immediately forgot his name. My brain was too busy screaming at me that this was a waste of time, that I was about to get laughed out of this building. He asked what we had. I told him we thought it might be a costume from The Wizard of Oz, the Cowardly Lion, but we were not sure. We needed confirmation. He smiled. Not mean, just tired. Told us he got 3 or 4 of these a month. People who found things in their grandparents' attics. Things with MGM labels. Things that looked authentic. Things that were almost always replicas or knockoffs or wishful thinking. I told him I understood, but I needed him to look anyway. We went out to the car, opened the trunk. The smell hit him immediately. He actually stepped back, put his hand over his nose, asked what the hell that was. I told him it was what we were hoping he could identify. I pulled the plastic wrap bundle out, laid it on the ground in the parking lot, started unwrapping. He watched. His expression changed as more of the costume became visible. The smile faded. He knelt down, pulled on a pair of latex gloves he had in his pocket, like he just carried those around. Maybe he did. He touched the fur, examined the seams, turned the headpiece over, looked at the construction, the padding, the interior lining. Then he stopped, went very still, asked if he could look at the ventilation system. I told him he could do whatever he needed to do. He spent 10 minutes examining the costume in silence. We just stood there, watching him work. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Elena gripped my arm, her nails digging in through my shirt. Finally, he sat back on his heels, looked up at me, asked where we got this. I told him the story. Uncle Pete, the hangar, the Footlocker, the film reels, all of it. He nodded slowly, kept nodding, like pieces were clicking together in his head. Then he told us about the ventilation system, about why it existed, about what it meant. Under the Technicolor lights they used in 1939, the studio temperature could hit 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Easy. Those lights were not like modern LEDs. They were hot, brutally hot, and Bert Law was wrapped in 90 pounds of real lion fur under those lights for hours at a time. The costume had to have ventilation, or the actor would pass out, so they built in these channels, these specific pathways for air to move through the costume, to keep Law from cooking alive in there. But here's the thing. The ventilation system was custom, unique to this one costume. The patterns were like a fingerprint, and this costume had those exact patterns. He told us Bert Lahr sweated so much during filming that they had to dry the costume with industrial fans after every shooting day, sometimes multiple times a day. The smell we were smelling? That was not just decay. That was 50 years of accumulated sweat and body oils and Hollywood history baked into genuine lion fur. He told us that smell was the smell of film history, the smell of the golden age of MGM, the smell of something that could never be replicated. Then he asked if we knew what we had. I told him I thought I did, but I wanted him to say it. He told us this was not a costume. This was an icon. This was the holy grail of Hollywood memorabilia. This was something people had been searching for since the 70s. Something most experts thought was lost, destroyed, gone forever. He told us the auction starting price would be $1 million. Minimum. He told us it could go higher, much higher, depending on who showed up to bid. Elena started crying. Not sad crying. The other kind. The kind where you do not know what else to do with the emotions, so they just leak out of your face. I stood there in a parking lot in West Hollywood staring at a rotting pile of lion skin and leather, and I thought about irony, about how the universe has a sense of humor. My brother called me a coward, said I did not have the spine to stand up for myself, said I was soft, weak, not man enough to fight for what was mine. And what did I end up with? The skin of the most famous coward in American cinema. The character who spent an entire movie looking for courage. The character who had it all along but did not know it. I thought about those old Antiques Roadshow episodes. The ones where some grandmother brings in a painting she bought at a yard sale and finds out it is worth a fortune, where her whole life changes in 15 seconds. I never thought I would be that guy. Never thought I would be the one standing there while someone tells me I just won the lottery. But here I was. The auction happened 6 weeks later. New York City. Sotheby's. The expert connected us with them. Handled everything. We shipped the costume in a climate-controlled container. Like it was a corpse. Which I guess it kind of was. Elena and I flew out for the auction. First time either of us had been to New York. We stayed in a hotel that cost more per night than our mortgage payment. We walked around Manhattan feeling like tourists, like people who did not belong but were there anyway. The auction was telephone bidding. We were not in the room, just in a side office with a speakerphone and a representative who walked us through the process. She told us not to get too excited. These things could go either way. Sometimes pieces did not meet their reserve. Sometimes they sold for less than expected. She told us to be prepared for disappointment. The bidding started at $1.2 million. I nearly passed out when I heard that number, but it did not stop there. The auctioneer gave this whole speech about how this was not just a costume. This was part of American DNA. The Wizard of Oz was not just a movie. It was a cultural touchstone, the most watched film in human history. Generations of children grew up with it. It was woven into the fabric of who we were as a country. He said owning a piece of it was not about money. It was about preserving history, about holding on to something that mattered. The bids started coming in, fast, faster than I expected. The numbers climbed. 1.5, 1.8, 2 million. Elena grabbed my hand, squeezed so hard I lost circulation. I did not care. 2.5, 2.8, 3 million. The room got quiet. We could hear it through the speakerphone. That pause, that moment where everyone is trying to decide if they are really going to do this, if they are really going to spend this much money on a piece of fabric and dead animal. $3.077 million. Going once, going twice. Sold. We sat there in that office and we cried. Both of us. Not because we were happy. Not really. We cried because we could breathe. because the mortgage was paid, because the car was paid, because the credit cards were paid, because every stress, every fear, every sleepless night spent wondering how we were going to make it was just erased. The money hit our account 3 days later after auction fees and commissions. $2.4 million. More money than I thought I would see in my lifetime. The first thing I did was call a tax attorney, because Uncle Sam was going to want his cut, and I was not stupid enough to think I could keep all of it. The story went viral. Local news picked it up, then national, then international. Man finds $1 million movie costume in dead uncle's hangar. Human interest gold. They wanted interviews. We declined. I was not interested in being famous. I just want to be left alone. But Greg saw it. Of course he saw it. He showed up at our apartment 2 weeks after the auction. Drove up in a new Dodge Challenger. Bright red. Probably $40,000 worth of car. Probably bought with the money from Uncle Pete's land. He pounded on the door. Shouted through it that we needed to talk. That I had screwed him. That he deserved half. That this was family money. Inheritance. Community property. I opened the door. He was standing there. Face red. Veins popping in his neck. Screaming about lawyers. About how he was going to sue. About how I stole from him. I let him finish. Let him get it all out. Then I told him to wait 1 second. Went inside. Got a folder off the kitchen table. Came back. Inside was a quitclaim deed. The one he made me sign. The one that gave him the land and gave me the hangar and everything in it. I opened it. Showed him the relevant paragraph. The one his lawyer wrote. The one that said Greg waived all rights and claims to any contents of said hangar in exchange for sole ownership of the land. His lawyer had been thorough. Airtight. No ambiguity. No wiggle room. Greg had been so focused on taking land that he made sure the paperwork covered everything. Made sure I could not come back later and claim anything he found on the property. He protected himself from me and screwed himself in the process. He tried to argue. Said that was not what he meant. Said we both knew the intent was to split things fairly. Said a court would see that. Would understand. I told him about the parole evidence rule. Something our tax attorney explained to me. In contract law, if you have a written agreement, any verbal promises or intentions do not matter. The paper is what matters. What we said, what we meant, what we thought we were agreeing to. None of it counted. Only what was written down and signed. He wrote the contract. He signed it. He enforced it. Now it was enforcing itself against him. He changed tactics. Tried the family angle. Told me we were brothers. That family helped each other. That mom and dad would want us to share. I looked at him. Really looked at him. Saw him the way I should have seen him years ago. Not as my older brother. Not as someone I respected or looked up to. Just as a person. A selfish, manipulative person who only cared about himself. I told him he bought my share of the inheritance. He set the price. $180,000 in land versus whatever was in a junk-filled hangar. He thought he was getting the good end of the deal. Thought he was clever. Thought he screwed me over one more time. He was wrong. I told him the deal was closed. The transaction was complete. There was nothing left to negotiate. Nothing left to discuss. I told him he should leave and not come back. He stood there, mouth working, trying to find words, trying to find some angle, some way to turn this around, some way to win like he always won. He could not. There was no angle, no play, no move. He lost. For the first time in his life, he lost, and there was nothing he could do about it. I closed the door, locked it, heard him shouting through it for another minute, then the sound of footsteps, then his car starting, then nothing. Elena was sitting at the kitchen table, asked if he was gone. I told her he was, for good this time. She asked what we were going to do now, with the money, with everything. I sat down across from her, looked at my phone, at the text from the bank showing our account balance. $2.1 million after the tax attorney took his consultation fee, and we made our first estimated tax payment. I told her we were not buying a house. Not yet. First, we were going to make sure the IRS got their cut. going to make sure everything was legal and clean and bulletproof. Because the only thing scarier than my brother was the federal government. Then we were going to pay off every debt we had. Then we were going to put away money for retirement, for emergencies, for the future. Then maybe we would think about a house, about starting a family, about actually living instead of just surviving. She asked if I was happy, if this felt like winning. I thought about it, really thought about it, about Greg driving away in his overpriced car, about Uncle Pete's hangar sitting empty in Fontana, about the Cowardly Lion costume, probably in some climate-controlled vault somewhere, property of someone with more money than I could imagine. I told her I was not happy. Not exactly, but I was free, and that was better. Free from Greg, free from debt, free from the fear that kept me up at night, free from being the little brother who always lost. The Cowardly Lion spent a whole movie looking for courage, found out he had it all along, just needed someone to tell him. I guess I did the same thing. Spent years thinking I was weak, thinking I did not have what it took to stand up for myself. Turns out I did. I just needed the right moment, the right reason. Greg gave me that reason. Uncle Pete gave me the means. And 90-pound lion skin gave me the ending. Not the one I expected, but the one I needed. The last time I drove past Uncle Pete's land, it had a for sale sign on it. Greg was trying to flip it. Probably needed the money. Probably spent more than he should have on that car. On trying to look successful. I did not stop, just drove past. Kept going. Left it behind like everything else. Some stories do not have happy endings. They just have endings, where things change, where people move on, where the past stops being present. This was one of those, and I was okay with that.